Women of Reddit, what was your worst run-in with a creep? You/dirty monkey butt responded. A guy at my university followed me around for about 15 years. I have a unique surname. There used to be a way for students to use Pine to find out who else was logged in and where on campus. He would use that command and show up in the computer lab and sit next to me. He looked me up in the phone book and showed up at my parents' house. After a restraining order, you would think it was done, right? Wrong. I was speaking at an international conference in another country. Guess who was sitting in the front row? This was a conference for a very niche scientific field that he was definitely not part of. A few years later, I was at an alumni event with my husband. My husband left the table to go to the washroom. Guess who sat down the second he left? Police were called. It's been a few years since the last incident. Still paranoid. You/Airith responded. I was 12 years old, on a public bus, and wearing my sailor-esque Catholic schoolgirl uniform. As I was standing near the back door waiting to get off at my stop, a small, greasy-looking adult man sidled up too close to me. He had a smarmy little smile on his face. I was so confused as to why he was standing that close, that for a few seconds I didn't notice his hand cupping my butt. Fortunately, we were pulling up to my stop, so once I got over the shock of my situation, I hollered, "Don't touch me," and jumped off the bus. Since that day, LVE always been very aware of my personal space, and have no problem telling people to back off if they are making me feel uncomfortable. Creepy people who prey on little kids are the worst. You/the Tasticarghost responded. My friend and I were 16 and wandering around at a Sephora in the mall, just swatching eyeshadow and highlighter on our wrists. He was the only guy in the store, and I only vaguely noticed him in the same aisle as us just before we paid. It didn't ring any alarm bells for me whatsoever, because why should it? We picked up our highlighter and went to pay. The girl at the register rung up our items, leaned over and said quietly, "That guy followed you two into the store and has been watching you in each aisle. I'm going to give you your bags, and go ask him if he needs any help. You two need to get as far away as possible. If you see him follow you outside of this store, go talk to security." She handed us our bags, gestured at the door, and walked up to him as we ran out. I hope she gets all the good things in this life. You/Nadia Kanoskers respond. This happened when I was a freshman in college. I was at the bus stop, with a bag of groceries in each hand, just minding my own business, waiting for the bus to go home. Then, an older man, must have been in his late 40s or early 50s, starts approaching me and saying really crude things. I should point out that I am barely over 5 feet tall. This man towered over me and was at least twice my weight. I ignore him, don't say a word, I don't even look in his direction. His comments start getting more sexually explicit the closer he gets. I realize that the longer I stay quiet, the closer he's gonna get, and when he was about an arm length away, I decided to speak up. Now, what I wanted to do was explain that he was making me uncomfortable and I would appreciate some space, but I must have been all out of patience because what actually came out was, "Can you back the F*** up away from me? Oh my God." This grown-ass man acted so outraged that I dared speak to him like that. He starts screaming about how I should respect my elders, how I have no manners, and he actually throws a bottle at me. He missed. He goes on for maybe another 5 minutes berating me loudly until the bus arrives. Never went to that grocery store again after that encounter. You/Tumbledstone responded. I unfortunately have a few stories, but this is one that tops the list. I'm a bartender and one night I was serving 3 men who work at an Italian restaurant nearby. I was offered a job, which I politely declined. They were my last patrons. I closed out their tab, finished my side work and had a busboy walk me to my car. As the busboy left in his own car, this black Porsche SUV blocks me in my spot. The window is rolled down and I realize it's the owner of the Italian restaurant. He asks if I want to go home with him. I decline. He asks if the busboy was my boyfriend and I lied and said yes. He scoffed and sped off. I hurry and leave to head home. As I pull into my parking spot at my house, I see the same SUV drive by. I woke up my neighbor who was a military guy, and he said he'd keep an eye out. That night I found the guy's name online, his Facebook profile, his business profile, his wife's profile and his phone number. I took screenshots and sent them all to him telling him not to harass me or I'll retaliate. I never heard from him again. Lesson learned, always pay attention to your surroundings while driving home. You/Tornado Butts responded. The most memorable was when I was sitting in my parents' front garden, on the swing, reading. The way everything is laid out with the trees and whatnot, You can barely see the swing deck barbecue area from any perspective that's not from the front door. Very private spot. Anyway, I was just sitting there reading when I hear someone walking up. Assume it's a family member because how would it not be? Someone plops down on the swing next to me, throws an arm around me, and it's just some fucking guy. Says some stuff, tries to move closer, and proceeds to attempt to keep me from leaving when I get up. I get there, practically sprint back to the house and tell my dad what just happened and that there's some asshole in our garden being completely gross at me. He just laughs and says, "Oh, that's just new across the street neighbor. Be nice." The fuck? Over the next couple years, shithead would go on to make me and my older, only occasionally visiting, sisters super uncomfortable any chance he got. Long stories. And his poor, but large and angry, dog was always loose in the neighborhood and murdering other people's pets. That motherfucker still makes my blood boil. You/deleted responded. Was 21 in a strange city and got separated from my friend at a bar. I was drunk and wanted to go back to the hotel, so as I'm leaving, this guy who had been sitting near me all night followed and got in my cab with me and closed the door. Again, I was very drunk, so had to think quickly and stay as calm as possible. He tried to talk to me and I just nodded and made small talk. I didn't know if rejection would turn him violent, so I played along the best I could, after telling the driver where to take me. The whole time this guy is moving closer and touching me, so as soon as the car stopped I got out, ran into the hotel lobby where I knew this man would be following me, and screamed to the hotel security and desk employees, "I do not know this man. He is following me." And they took it from there. You/Skyanyone responded. A guy who stays regularly at the hotel I work in. All the female staff know to avoid getting caught alone with him. He has a habit of asking us if we know of any adult fun nearby. If you just act like you don't know what he's talking about, he'll say he wants to go to brothels and have a good time without his wife. He'll then progress to offering you various amounts of money for the night and asking you what you like in bed and what you'd be willing to do. He developed such an obsession with one of our staff before she left that security would walk round with her when he stayed because he'd followed her out to her car at one point, making suggestive comments. Got stuck alone with him once as I was behind the counter and he stood blocking the only way out from behind it. He started the usual chat and I told him I wasn't interested. He then moved on to asking me what time I finished, if I lived nearby, if I walked home alone. My male co-worker turned up then, but he creeped on me from a distance the rest of the day and watched me leave. I have no doubt he will assault someone one day. Hotel won't ban him because he regularly spends money. Edit. I woke up to so many replies on here. Quite a lot of people are telling me to share the name of the hotel so they can leave bad reviews. The thing is that it's probably already not in the best financial place due to the pandemic, and tanking it that way could result in a lot of people losing their jobs. It's badly managed, but I do have co-workers I don't want to put in that position. You/deleted responded. When I was 18, my friend and I were driving home around 3 a.m. and we stopped by a gas station to get a snack. We hop out of the car and immediately this guy nearby call out to me, saying brunette, white jacket. He asks my name, I give him a fake one, and my friend and I go into the store. We decided to wait in there until he drove away, but 15 minutes later he was still there. Eventually he comes into the store, looks around for us, and approaches me. The guy looked to be around 25 to 30. He smelled of cigarettes and I backed up closer to my friend, but he took a step forward and proceeded to ask me for my number, saying I was cute, etc. I lied and told Ophile then Miss, which home Mac and time, and leaves. We watched their car drive away and only leave about 5 minutes after we were sure he was gone. We left the store and got into the car. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I saw his car pulled over on the side of the road. We drove past it and I watched as the car turned on and started following us. I begged my friend to take the long way home, because I didn't want to lead him to my house and because the long way passes by a fire station that I would have gone to for help, had they followed us that far. Eventually we lose sight of the car, go home, and I never saw him or the car again. You/needs more tuber responded. Weird Larry lived in my dorm. He unsuccessfully hit on all the girls, which is why he was Weird Larry. It totally ruined his self-esteem. One night, Larry just showed up and invited himself into my room. I was not fully clothed. He took this as an invitation and climbed up into my bunk bed. I asked him to get down, and he asked me to come up there with him so we could have sex. When I refused, he took some quarters out of his pocket, put them on my nightstand and said, "What if paid you? You could do your laundry." I told him that wasn't enough change to do a full load of laundry, and he started crying and getting snot all over my pillow. I had to go wake up the road person in charge of the dorm and have him escorted out. Then he wouldn't stop sending me messages. They became more desperate, until they became threats at rape. I saved the messages and used them to file a restraining order. A few other girls wanted in on it, so Weird Larry was evicted from his own dormitory and had to drop out of school. TLDR, came into my dorm room uninvited, then gave me some quarters and told me he was paying me for sex. Then he cried when I said no. Wound up needing a restraining order. You/deleted responded. When I delivered pizzas and I was 18, this guy asked me if I wanted to step in while he grabbed his money. It was cold and rainy, so I took him up on the offer. He ended up trying to keep me there till his mom got home because he didn't have enough for the pizza. He tried to force me into a pyramid scheme and kept making uncomfortable comments about me. I had left my phone in my car, so I couldn't text my manager to call me to give me an out because no matter how hard I tried to leave, this guy would find some way to block my path. I took off when he went to the bathroom and told my manager about what happened. Females weren't allowed to deliver to him anymore. We eventually found out he was a convicted sex offender too. Normally I find an out and I always have an escape plan. But I put myself in a position where I couldn't give myself an escape. I went on to manage deliver pizzas for several years, but after that day I implemented a new rule, which was, never enter anyone's home unless I knew who it was. I'd stand in the pouring rain any day over entering a stranger's home. I come from a safe low crime area, but my gut instinct that night was that I was in danger. You/is your oven on responded. When I was 16, I went to Walmart with some of my siblings. I broke off to go look in the shoe section for some sandals, and as I turned a corner I almost ran into this guy. Very nondescript, wearing the jumper most guys who worked at the plants near there wore. For some reason I immediately got a really bad feeling, panicked, and turned around and went to the nearest other section. Took a few minutes to calm down enough to realize that it was the baby section and that I was staring at an infant bouncer for which I had no use. I laughed at myself, put it down to how anxious and socially awkward I was, and then turned around to go back to the shoe section. I then realized that guy was now in the baby section and that bad feeling came back. What were the odds he actually needed something there? I fled to the women's clothing section, thinking that there was no reason he would appear there. I was shaking, pretending to look at things and telling myself that I was being ridiculous, when he came up behind me and grabbed my behind so hard his fingers got places I wish they hadn't and whispered something in my ear. He immediately walked away, before I could do anything. I listen to those bad feelings now. Frankly, I consider myself extremely lucky. I also really wish I could remember what he said, but everything was kind of roaring and went blurry. I was so panicked. You/impending cataclysm responded. So, last year I got a flat tire on a semi-busy road right when a snowstorm started. Since I had AAA, I figured I would use one of my roadside assistants to have them replace the tire with a spare that I had, and I wouldn't have to go outside since I forgot gloves. While I was waiting, a mid-40s, early 50s man came up to my window and asked if I needed help. Thinking that he was just a good Samaritan at the time, I thanked him but told him, no, I was just waiting for AAA. Now, if he left here, I would have a nice story about a guy willing to help me with a car problem. Instead, he gets downright pushy. He lives nearby. I can just take my car there and change it in his garage. Why don't I just stay in his house until AAA comes? I kept telling him no until he starts yelling, and I rolled up the window and he starts pounding on it. Eventually he left when the AAA guy came, but I still took a very long and circuitous route home. You/Tumblestone responded. A few years ago, Elle lived in a tiny condo right next to a few trails in San Diego. I was on a pretty strict running and hiking routine. One night it got dark faster than expected. A man who appeared to be about 6 feet 3 inches and 200 pounds approached me as I was nearing the end of my hike. He told me, with a smirk on his face, to be careful as there are many things that could hurt me when the sun goes down. The next day, as I'm exiting my back gate, he's standing there as if he's waiting for me. He introduced himself and admitted he's been watching me for a while. I decided to pretend like I was grabbing something from my car and went back into my house. For the next few days I see this guy circling my condo, looking in if the curtains are open. He was always walking around day and night. I checked the Megan's Law website and surprise, there he was. Multiple charges including rape by force or fear and child pornography. I decided to contact his parole officer and he immediately returned my call, stated he could tell I fit his MO and to use extreme caution. He said he would do what he could to get him out of the neighborhood. After that call I thankfully never saw him again. You/Fearless Connection responded. Lived in a super cheap, super shitty apartment when I was in college. It was a decent city but the apartment was located in the only bad neighborhood. I was willing to deal with it for $300 per month rent. Because of the price, people constantly moved in and then bailed after a month or two. One of these people was an older, 50s-60s, veteran. He seemed polite at first, but after he had been there a few days, LD catch him weirdly leaning to watch me from behind a wall when LD be outside. When my boyfriend wasn't around, he'd wait for me to be outside and then run up to start a conversation. The conversations were usually harmless at first, then would get creepy, like asking what my favorite sex position is and other inappropriate questions. About 2 months in, I was leaving my house at like 10 p.m. and I saw him stumbling around the parking lot covered in blood. I quickly left and never saw him again. However, a few days later my landlord knocked on my door and was pale in the face. He asked me if I had seen anything unusual with the guy. I explained that I had, and asked why. He said that if I ever see him on the property again, I need to call the cops first and then call him. It took some prying to find out why, and he told me that he just went in to clean out his apartment and all that the guy had in his house was a dirty mattress, a broken toaster, and a full-on sex dungeon. I don't know what all that entailed, but he mentioned the place was full of bondage and restraint type things. It still makes my skin crawl to think about it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video and want to dive even deeper into our community, consider becoming a channel member. Members get exclusive perks like early access to videos, custom emojis, shoutouts, etc. And it's a great way to support the channel so I can keep bringing you the content you love.